Captain Michael Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the stars through the main view screen. The year was 2387, and humanity had finally achieved faster-than-light travel just 5 years earlier. This was only their third deep space mission beyond the solar system. "Captain, we are picking up strange signals," said Lieutenant Sarah Chen at the communication station. Torres walked over to examine the readings on her screen. The signals were unlike anything they had encountered before. "What kind of signals are they?" Torres asked. "They appear to be military communications, sir, but the language is completely unknown. The computer cannot translate any of it." Torres felt his heart racing. This could be first contact with an alien species. He had trained for this moment his entire career, but now that it was happening, he felt unprepared. "Lieutenant James at the science station. What can you tell me about the source of these signals?" Lieutenant Robert James looked up from his instruments. "The signals are coming from approximately 2 light-years away. There appear to be multiple ships, sir. Energy readings suggest they are much larger than our vessel." Torres made a decision that would change human history forever. According to first contact protocols, they should return to Earth immediately and report their findings. But something in the tone of the alien communications made him hesitate. "Can you determine anything about the nature of these communications?" he asked. "Sir, the computer has identified patterns that suggest distress calls. These aliens appear to be in trouble," James replied. Torres looked around his bridge. His crew of 35 humans had volunteered for this dangerous mission into unknown space. They were scientists, engineers, and diplomats, not soldiers. But they were also the best humanity had to offer. "Set a course for the signal source. Maximum speed," Torres ordered. "Sir, that goes against first contact protocols," said his second officer, Commander Lisa Morgan. "I know," Torres replied. "But if these beings are in distress, we cannot simply ignore them. That would not be the human way." The UES Harmony jumped to faster than light speed and covered the distance in 3 hours. When they arrived at the coordinates, what they saw amazed and terrified them. 2 massive alien ships were locked in combat. One was clearly losing. Its hull was torn open in multiple places, and atmosphere was venting into space. Energy beams and projectiles flew between the vessels like deadly fireworks. "My God," whispered Dr. Emily Wilson, the ship's xenobiologist. "Those ships are enormous. Each one is at least 10 times our size." The damaged ship was unlike anything human engineers had imagined. It was built like a fortress with thick armor plating and weapons everywhere. But even through the alien design, Torres could see this was a warship built by a warrior culture. "Captain, the damaged vessel's power core is becoming unstable," reported Chief Engineer David Park from the engine room through the communication system. "If it explodes, the blast will destroy both alien ships and us if we get too close." Torres studied the situation. The attacking ship was clearly winning. The damaged vessel would be destroyed within minutes. By all logic, they should stay away and observe. But Torres had not become a starship captain by following safe choices. "Can we help stabilize their power core?" he asked Park. "Sir, we know nothing about their technology. It would be extremely dangerous," Park replied. "But is it possible?" There was a pause. "Yes, sir. Our shield harmonics technology might be able to create a stabilization field around their reactor. But we would have to get very close, and if we are wrong, all 3 ships will be destroyed." Torres looked at his crew. Every face showed fear, but also determination. They had not come to the stars to hide from danger. "Do it," Torres ordered. "Take us in." The UES Harmony moved toward the damaged alien warship. As they got closer, the true size of the vessel became apparent. It was not just a ship. It was a flying fortress bristling with weapons that could destroy their small vessel with a single shot. "Activating shield harmonics," Park reported. "We are now connected to their power system. Sir, I am reading their internal structure. There are thousands of life forms aboard that ship." On the main screen, the alien vessel's power readings began to stabilize. The venting atmosphere slowed, then stopped. The ship was no longer in immediate danger of explosion. Suddenly, the attacking ship broke off its assault and jumped away at faster than light speed. "The battle was over. We did it," Morgan said quietly. "We saved them." But their celebration was short-lived. The alien warship was turning toward them. Its weapons were powering up. "Captain, they are targeting us," James reported, his voice tight with fear. Torres stood calmly in the center of his bridge. "Open all communication channels. Broadcast on all frequencies." "Channel open, sir. This is Captain Michael Torres of the United Earthship Harmony. We are a peaceful vessel from the planet Earth. We helped stabilize your power core because we saw you were in danger. We mean you no harm. For long minutes there was no response. Then a section of the alien warship's hull opened and a smaller vessel emerged. It was still twice the size of the Harmony, but it was clearly not attacking. Captain, we are receiving a communication request, Chen reported. Put it on screen. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at their first alien being. It stood nearly 9 feet tall, with dark red skin covered in what appeared to be natural bone armor. Its face was fierce, with glowing yellow eyes and sharp teeth. Most striking were its hands, which ended in razor-sharp claws that looked like they could cut through steel. When the alien spoke, the computer's translation system struggled to convert the words. I am War Leader Keith of the Raksari Empire. You are the beings who prevented our ship from exploding. Torres stepped forward. Yes, we saw you were in danger and wanted to help. Keth stared at him for a long moment. Why, we are strangers. We could be your enemies. Because it was the right thing to do, Torres replied simply. The alien's expression changed. Something like surprise crossed its fierce features. You risked your small ship and your lives for beings you do not know. This is not logical behavior for warriors. We are not warriors, Torres said. We are explorers, scientists, and diplomats. We came to the stars to learn and to meet new civilizations in peace. Keth tilted its massive head. Peace? You speak of peace, yet you move toward danger instead of away from it. You act with courage, yet claim not to be warriors. You are a puzzle, Captain Torres of Earth. Perhaps we could meet in person and discuss our differences, Torres suggested. We have much to learn from each other. The war leader considered this. Very well. I will come aboard your vessel, but I will bring guards. You are welcome aboard the UES Harmony, Torres replied. As the communication ended, Torres looked around his bridge. His crew had just made first contact with an alien species that appeared to be everything humans were not. Warlike, aggressive, and built for combat. But somehow they had earned its curiosity rather than its hostility. Sir, Morgan said quietly, what if we just changed the course of galactic history? Torres smiled. Then I hope we changed it for the better. The first meeting between humans and the Raksari was about to begin. War Leader Keth stood in the transport bay of his ship, preparing to board the human vessel. His 2 guards, massive Raksari warriors named Vex and Tor, checked their weapons one final time. Each warrior stood over 8 feet tall and wore the traditional bone armor that grew naturally from their bodies as they aged. War Leader, are you certain this is wise? Asked Vex. These humans could be setting a trap. Keth looked at his subordinate. Did you see what they did, Vex? They flew directly into danger to save us. No species we have ever encountered has done such a thing without demanding payment or territory in return. Perhaps they are simply foolish, suggested Tor. No, Keith replied, thinking of the calm voice of Captain Torres. Foolish beings do not survive long enough to build ships that travel between stars. These humans are something new. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Harmony, Captain Torres was preparing to receive his first alien guests. Dr. Emily Wilson stood beside him, her hands shaking slightly with excitement and fear. Captain, what do we know about their culture? She asked. Very little, Torres admitted, but they appear to be warriors. We should show respect for their strength while demonstrating our own peaceful intentions. The airlock opened with a hiss, and Keth stepped aboard the human ship. Torres had expected the aliens to be large based on their ship designs, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. Keth had to duck slightly to fit through the corridor, and his presence filled the space completely. Welcome aboard the UES Harmony, War Leader Keth, Torres said, offering his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Keth looked at the small human hand extended toward him. His own clawed hands could easily crush Torres's bones, but something about the captain's calm demeanor impressed him. Carefully, Keth reached out and gently grasped Torres's hand. You show no fear, Keth observed. I am afraid, Torres admitted honestly, but fear should not prevent us from doing what is right. This response surprised Keth even more. In Raksari culture, admitting fear was seen as weakness, but this human spoke of it as if it were normal and then acted with courage anyway. Torres led them to the ship's main conference room. Along the way, Keth noticed that the human crew members they passed showed curiosity rather than terror. Some even nodded politely as the aliens walked by. Your warriors are strange, Keth commented. They do not challenge us or show aggression. They are not warriors, Dr. Wilson explained. They are scientists, engineers, and explorers. We came to space to learn, not to conquer. Keth stopped walking and stared at her. You send your weakest members into unknown space? This makes no sense. These are not our weakest members, Torres said. These are our best and brightest minds. In human society, knowledge and wisdom are forms of strength. In the conference room, Torres showed Keth displays of Earth and human civilization. The war leader saw cities built for learning rather than war, ships designed for exploration rather than conquest, and technologies created to help rather than harm. Your species builds tools for peace, Keth said, studying the images. Yet you risked your lives to save warriors you had never seen before. How do you explain this? All thinking beings have value, Torres replied. It does not matter if we have met before or if our cultures are different. When someone needs help, we provide it if we can. Keth was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke about his own people. The Raxari were conquerors who had destroyed dozens of civilizations. They believed that only the strong deserved to survive, and strength meant the ability to defeat enemies in battle. We have ruled through fear for 1,000 years, Keith explained. Other species submit to us or we destroy them. But you humans did not submit or flee. You chose a third option we had never considered. Dr. Wilson leaned forward. What option is that? You chose to help, Keth said simply. In all our history, no species has ever helped us without wanting something in return. Torres nodded. Perhaps that is why your species has always been at war. If you only know conquest and submission, you miss the possibility of cooperation. When the meeting ended, Keth returned to his ship with much to think about. But his report to the Raxari High Command did not go well. War Master Grix, the supreme leader of their military forces, dismissed the humans as weak fools. They helped you because they are too cowardly to fight, Grix declared, from his throne on the Raxari homeworld. Weakness disguised as virtue is still weakness. War Master, I respectfully disagree, Keth replied. They flew into danger to help strangers. That requires a different kind of courage. Grix slammed his massive fist on the arm of his throne. There is only one kind of strength that matters, war leader. The strength to destroy your enemies. These humans have technology we can use. Capture their ships and learn their secrets. War Master, I gave them my word that we would meet in peace. Your word was given to weaklings, Grix snarled. It means nothing. Take a fleet and bring me human prisoners for questioning. Keth had no choice but to obey, but his heart was troubled. He gathered a small fleet of 5 warships and set course for human space. But instead of looking for easy targets, he decided to test these humans in a different way. Meanwhile, Dr. James Wilson, a human xenobiologist who had been studying intercepted Raxari communications, made an important discovery. He had been working day and night to understand Raxari culture, and he believed he had found the key. Captain Torres, he called excitedly from his laboratory. I think I understand what we are dealing with. Torres arrived quickly, finding Wilson surrounded by computer displays showing Raxari language patterns and cultural analysis. The Raxari value strength above everything, Wilson explained, but their definition of strength is very narrow. They only recognize physical power and military victory. They cannot see other forms of strength. What do you mean? Torres asked. Think about it, sir. We demonstrated incredible courage when we saved their ship, but they do not recognize it as strength because we did not defeat an enemy in battle. We need to show them that humans have strength but in ways they can understand. Torres studied the data. What do you suggest? We need to demonstrate human strategic thinking, leadership ability, and tactical innovation. Show them that our minds are as powerful as their claws and weapons. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. Commander Lisa Morgan's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we are detecting Raxari ships approaching our position. 5 vessels, all heavily armed. Torres and Wilson rushed to the bridge. On the main screen, they could see Keth's fleet emerging from faster-than-light travel. Are they attacking? Torres asked. Unknown, sir. They are maintaining distance but have not powered weapons. A communication came through from Keth's flagship. The war leader appeared on screen, but his expression was different from before. He looked conflicted. Captain Torres, I have been ordered to test your people's strength. My superiors believe you are weak because you choose peace over war. Torres understood immediately. What kind of test do you propose, war leader? Single combat between champions. But not with weapons, Keth said, surprising his own crew. You spoke of different kinds of strength. Prove it, Torres looked at his officers. This was exactly the opportunity Dr. Wilson had predicted they would need. What do you have in mind? Torres asked. There is a space station in this system caught in a gravitational anomaly. Civilian refugees from 3 different species are trapped aboard. Whoever can save more lives proves their strength. Torres smiled. This was not a test of military might, but of leadership, strategy, and the human ability to solve impossible problems. We accept your challenge, War Leader Keth. The test that would determine the future relationship between humans and Raxari was about to begin. The space station hung in the void like a broken metal flower. Gravitational forces from a nearby collapsed star were slowly tearing it apart. Captain Torres studied the readings on his screen, while War Leader Keth did the same on his ship. How many people are on that station? Torres asked his science officer. Lieutenant Robert James worked quickly at his instruments. Approximately 3,000 civilians, sir. The station's structure is failing. We estimate 6 hours before complete collapse. On Keth's ship, his own officers were reporting similar findings, but the Raxari approach was different. War Leader, we should send boarding parties to secure the strongest survivors, suggested Commander Vex. The weak will slow us down. Keth considered this. In traditional Raxari thinking, this made sense. Save those who could fight and let natural selection take care of the rest. But the humans had made him question these old ways. No, Keth decided. We will attempt to save all civilians, as the humans will surely try to do. This is a test of strength through leadership, not selection. Meanwhile, Torres was organizing his crew differently. He called together his senior officers in the conference room. We need to think about this logically, he said. We have 1 small ship. They have 5 large warships. In terms of raw capacity, they can carry more people than we can. Chief Engineer David Park nodded. Sir, their ships are built for war. Ours is built for exploration. We have better sensors and more flexible systems. Dr. Emily Wilson had been studying the station's layout. Captain, the station has multiple sections connected by corridors. Some sections are more damaged than others. If we can stabilize the structure, we can buy time for a more complete evacuation. Commander Lisa Morgan added, The Raxari will likely focus on speed and direct action. We should focus on preventing further damage while we work. Torres smiled. This was exactly the kind of problem-solving that humans excelled at. While the Raxari saw a rescue mission, the humans saw an engineering challenge that required multiple solutions working together. Both fleets approached the station simultaneously. The Raxari ships moved in formation, their massive bulk impressive against the stars. The single human ship looked tiny in comparison, but it moved with precision and purpose. War Leader, called the communications officer on Keth's ship. The humans are hailing us. Put them through. Torres appeared on the screen. War Leader Keth, we propose sharing information about the station's condition. This will help both our rescue efforts. Keth was surprised. In Raxari culture, sharing tactical information with a competitor was unthinkable. Why would you help us succeed in this test? Because the real test is not who saves more people, Torres replied. The real test is how many people we can save together. Every life has value. This statement confused Keth's officers, but the war leader was beginning to understand human thinking. Very well, Captain. Share your data. The human ship moved close to the station and began detailed scans. Their advanced sensors revealed structural weaknesses that the Raxari ships could not detect. Torres immediately transmitted this information to Keth. The station's power core is still functional, Torres reported. If we can reroute power to the structural integrity fields, we can slow the gravitational damage. Keth studied the data. Our ships do not have the technical capability for such precise work. But your ships have powerful tractor beams, Torres replied. You could hold the station sections together while we make repairs. And so began an unexpected cooperation. Keth's warships positioned themselves around the station, their massive tractor beams grabbing onto different sections to prevent them from breaking apart. Meanwhile, the UES Harmony moved to the station's docking port. Torres led an away team aboard the failing station. The corridors were filled with frightened civilians from 3 different alien species. The Zalani were tall and thin with blue skin. The Korath were short and covered in fur. The Bavek were silicon-based lifeforms who looked like walking crystals. "My name is Captain Torres," he announced over the station's communication system. "We are here to evacuate everyone safely. Please remain calm and follow the instructions of your section leaders." But the situation was more complex than anyone had expected. The different species had different environmental needs. The Zalani needed cold temperatures. The Korath required high oxygen levels. The Bavek needed specific mineral compounds to survive. Dr. Wilson quickly assessed the problem. "Captain, we cannot simply transport them all to the same ship. They need different life support systems." This was where human creativity proved its worth. Torres contacted Keth with a new proposal. "War leader, our ship has flexible life support that can accommodate the Zalani. Your ships run hot and have thick atmospheres perfect for the Korath, but none of us can support the Bavek properly. What do you suggest?" Keth asked. "We convert one section of the station itself into a temporary habitat for the Bavek, then tow that section to safety with your tractor beams." The plan was ambitious and dangerous, but it was the only way to save everyone. The Raksari and human crews worked together, with human technical expertise guiding Raksari's strength and power. As the evacuation proceeded, Keth observed something remarkable. The humans did not just rescue people efficiently, they comforted the afraid, organized the confused, and made sure that families stayed together. Torres personally carried elderly Korath who could not walk fast enough. Dr. Wilson used her knowledge of alien biology to treat injured Zalani. "They are not just saving lives," Keth told his second-in-command. "They are preserving dignity and hope." The most crucial moment came when the station's main support beam began to crack. If it failed, the entire structure would collapse before the evacuation was complete. "War leader," Torres called over the communication link. "We need your strongest ship to hold that beam in place, but the gravitational stress will likely damage your vessel." Keth did not hesitate. "This is what strength is for, Captain. Vex, take our ship into position." The massive Raksari warship moved between the station and the collapsed star, using its hull to brace the failing beam. The gravitational forces tore at the ship's armor, but it held position. With the extra time this bought them, the evacuation was completed successfully. All 3,000 civilians were rescued. The Zalani went to the human ship, the Korath to the Raksari vessels, and the Bavek section was carefully towed away from danger. As both fleets moved to a safe distance, the space station finally collapsed into the gravitational well of the dead star. If they had arrived even an hour later, everyone would have died. "War leader," Torres called over the communication link. "Your ship took significant damage protecting those people. That was the bravest thing I have ever witnessed." Keth looked at his scarred and dented warship, then at the rescued civilians on his view screen. For the first time in his life, he understood what the humans meant by strength. "Captain Torres," he replied, "I believe I am beginning to understand your people. This was not a competition. This was a lesson." "What kind of lesson?" "The lesson that true strength comes from what you build and protect, not what you can destroy." The test was over, but for Keth a new understanding was just beginning. War leader Keth returned to the Raksari homeworld with a damaged ship and a changed mind. The rescue at the space station had shown him that humans possessed a kind of strength his people had never recognized. But convincing the Raksari High Command would not be easy. The council chamber was a massive hall carved from black stone. War Master Grix sat on his throne, surrounded by dozens of other military leaders. Their bone armor gleamed under the harsh lights and their yellow eyes glowed with suspicion. "You failed, Keth," Grix announced as soon as the war leader entered. "You were supposed to capture human technology, not cooperate with them." "War Master, I learned something more valuable than technology," Keth replied. "I learned that we have been thinking about strength in the wrong way." A rumble of angry voices filled the chamber. War Master Drak, Grix's second-in-command, stood up. Drak was even larger than Grix, with scars covering his armor from 100 battles. "You speak of cooperation with weaklings," Drak growled. "The humans hide their cowardice behind pretty words about helping others." Keth straightened his shoulders. The humans saved 3,000 lives using one small ship. We needed 5 warships to accomplish the same task. Who showed greater strength? Numbers mean nothing, Grix replied. What matters is whether they can fight when attacked. Then let me tell you about their Captain Torres, Keth said. He led his crew into danger to save strangers. He shared information with us even though we were competing against him. He risked his life for people he had never met. If that is not the courage of a warrior, what is? The chamber erupted in arguments. Some Raxari agreed with Keth. Others supported the traditional ways, but War Master Grix had made his decision. You have been contaminated by human weakness, Grix declared. War Master Drac will take command of the border fleets. You will remain on the homeworld until you remember what it means to be Raxari. Keth was essentially exiled, but he was not alone. Several younger war leaders had begun to question the old ways. They met in secret to discuss what they had learned about humans. Meanwhile, in human space, Dr. Mark Stevens was preparing for the most dangerous mission of his career. The xenobiologist had volunteered to live among the Raxari to learn about their culture firsthand. Stevens was a small man, barely 5.5 feet tall, with gentle eyes and a calm manner. He looked nothing like what most people expected from someone brave enough to live among alien warriors. But Captain Torres had chosen him carefully. Dr. Stevens, Torres said as they prepared for the mission, you will be completely alone among beings who could kill you without effort. Are you certain about this? Stevens nodded. Captain, if we want to build a lasting friendship with the Raxari, we need to understand them. And they need to understand us. Someone has to take the first step. Stevens was transported to a Raxari border world where Keth had arranged for him to stay with a warrior clan. The clan leader, a female Raxari named Vera, was curious about humans but deeply suspicious. You are very small, she observed when Stevens arrived. How do you survive among your own kind without being eaten? Stevens smiled. Humans do not eat each other. We survive by working together and sharing knowledge. Vera tilted her massive head. That makes no sense. The strong should rule the weak. That is the natural way. Over the following week, Stevens lived among the Raxari and observed their daily life. He discovered that beneath their fearsome appearance, they were deeply honorable people. They never broke their word. They cared for their young with fierce devotion, and they had a complex culture based on personal honor and loyalty. But he also saw their limitations. Raxari society had no place for those who were not physically strong. The sick and elderly were abandoned. Innovation was discouraged because it suggested that traditional ways were wrong. Stevens began teaching some of the younger Raxari about human culture. He showed them pictures of Earth, where humans cared for their elderly and weak. He explained how human science had eliminated diseases that once killed millions. Your species wastes the potential of those who are not warriors, he told Vera one evening as they sat around a fire. Among humans, our greatest leaders are often those who would be considered weak by Raxari standards. Give me an example, Vera challenged. Stevens thought carefully. There was a human leader named Franklin Roosevelt. He could not walk without help, but he led our people through the greatest war in our history. His mind was strong even though his body was not. Vera considered this. Among Raxari, such a person would never be allowed to lead. And that is why humans have achieved things that pure physical strength cannot accomplish, Stevens replied. We use the gifts of every individual, not just the physically powerful. The real test of the growing human-Raxari friendship came when long-range sensors detected something that terrified both species. The Void Stalkers had returned. The Void Stalkers were an ancient enemy of the Raxari, an insectoid hive mind that consumed entire planets. They had nearly destroyed Raxari civilization 1,000 years ago, and now they were coming back. Admiral Torres, now promoted after the success of First Contact, received the emergency transmission from Keth. Admiral Torres, our ancient enemy has returned, Keth's image said on the view screen. The Void Stalkers are attacking our outer colonies. They adapt quickly to any strategy we use against them. Our traditional tactics are useless. Torres studied the tactical data that Keth had shared. The Void Stalkers were indeed formidable. They learned from every attack and evolved countermeasures within hours. How many ships do you have available? Torres asked. 50 battle fleets, Keth replied. But numbers mean nothing against an enemy that adapts to our every move. Torres made a decision that surprised everyone, including his own crew. "We will help you fight them." "Admiral," Commander Morgan said quietly, "we have no treaty with the Raksari. Earth Command has not authorized military action." "Then I will take responsibility," Torres replied. "These beings helped us understand that cooperation is stronger than competition. Now we must prove that friendship means standing together against common threats." The human fleet was much smaller than the Raksari forces. Earth could only spare 20 ships for the mission. But what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in tactical innovation. Dr. Emily Wilson, now serving as the fleet's tactical advisor, had studied the Void Stalker attack patterns. "Admiral, they adapt to repeated tactics, but they need time to process new information. If we constantly change our approach, we can stay ahead of their evolution. What do you suggest? Combine human unpredictability with Raksari strength. Use their ships as the main force while our vessels provide hit-and-run attacks from unexpected angles." The joint human-Raksari fleet met the Void Stalkers at the edge of Raksari space. The battle was unlike anything either species had ever experienced. Raksari warships charged directly at the enemy, their massive weapons blazing. But instead of meeting them head-on, the Void Stalkers tried to adapt to this frontal assault. That was when the human ships struck. Coming from above, below, and the sides, human vessels used tactics the hive mind had never seen before. They attacked, retreated, and attacked again from completely different angles before the Void Stalkers could respond. War Leader Keth, Admiral Torres called over the communication link, "Now you see human strength in battle. We do not win through power alone, but through the ability to think in ways our enemies cannot predict." Keth watched the human ships dance around the massive Void Stalker vessels like small fish around great sea monsters. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Void Stalker fleet had been destroyed. More importantly, the survivors retreated, having learned that this sector of space was defended by beings they could not easily defeat. As the combined fleet returned to Raksari space, Keth sent a message to his homeworld that would change everything. To the High Command, he transmitted, "The humans have proven themselves in battle. They fought beside us against our most dangerous enemy and helped us achieve victory. I formally request that they be granted the status of Battle Brothers, the highest honor our people can bestow upon aliens." War Master Grix was forced to acknowledge the human contribution to the victory. More importantly, the younger Raksari had seen that cooperation could achieve what force alone could not. Dr. Stevens, still living among the warrior clans, watched as the news spread through Raksari society. For the first time, there were serious discussions about changing their ancient ways. "Perhaps," Vera said to him that night, "strength comes in more forms than we realized." Stevens smiled. "Perhaps both our peoples have things to learn from each other." The alliance between humans and Raksari had been forged in battle, but it was built on something much stronger than military cooperation. It was built on mutual respect and the recognition that different kinds of strength, when combined, could overcome any challenge. 3 years had passed since the victory over the Void Stalkers. The alliance between humans and Raksari had grown stronger, but it had also attracted dangerous attention from across the galaxy. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the UES Unity, looking at tactical displays that showed the approach of a massive enemy fleet. The hegemony had come to destroy the alliance that threatened their way of life. The hegemony was a coalition of militaristic species led by the Nexari Empire. For centuries, they had controlled galactic trade through fear and conquest. The idea of cooperation between former enemies terrified them because it showed other species that there was an alternative to submission. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake, "we are detecting over 200 enemy vessels. They outgun us 5-1. Torres nodded grimly. The human Raksari alliance could muster only 40 ships to face this threat. But numbers alone did not tell the whole story. On the Raksari flagship Storm of Honor, War Leader Keth was having similar thoughts. He now bore the title Human Friend, the highest honor his people could give to an outsider. His second in command was Commander David Parker, a human officer who had learned to speak fluent Raksari. "War Leader," Parker reported, "the enemy fleet is moving into attack formation. They are not bothering with negotiation or surrender demands." "Good," Keth replied. The Nexari have always been cowards who hide their weakness behind numbers. Today they will learn what true strength looks like. The joint human-Raxari fleet moved to intercept the hegemony forces at the edge of the Centauri system. What followed was the largest space battle in galactic history, but this was not just a military conflict. As the fleets engaged, long-range sensors detected something that changed everything. The hegemony had been using prison worlds throughout the galaxy, enslaving billions of beings from hundreds of species. Dr. Lisa Morgan, now director of Joint Human-Raxari Research, received the data aboard her science vessel. What she saw horrified her. "Admiral Torres," she called over the communication link, "the hegemony has been running slave operations on an unimaginable scale. There are entire worlds where they keep prisoners from species we have never even met." Torres felt a cold fury building inside him. This was exactly the kind of evil that cooperation was meant to fight against. "War leader Keth," he called to his Rexari counterpart, "are you receiving this data?" "Yes, Admiral," Keth replied, his voice tight with anger. "The hegemony has perverted the concept of strength. True warriors protect the innocent. They enslave them." The battle took on new meaning. This was not just about defending the Alliance. It was about liberating millions of enslaved beings who had no other hope of rescue. The hegemony forces were led by Supreme Commander Zelks of the Nexari Empire. Zelks was a cold, calculating being who viewed other species as resources to be exploited. He had expected the Alliance fleet to scatter when faced with overwhelming odds. Instead, he found himself facing enemies who fought with desperate courage and brilliant tactics. The human ships used their superior technology and unpredictable strategies to confuse the enemy formations. They would appear to retreat, only to turn and strike at weak points in the hegemony lines. Meanwhile, the Raxari warships charged directly into the heaviest fighting, their crews singing ancient battle songs as they engaged enemies 3 times their size. But the real surprise came when other species began to join the battle. The Zelani, who had been rescued from the space station years earlier, arrived with a small fleet of their own ships. The Korath followed, and then the Bavek. "Admiral," reported Commander Blake, "we are receiving messages from dozens of species. They are asking to join the fight against the hegemony." Torres realized that the Alliance had become something much larger than anyone had imagined. Species across the galaxy had been watching the cooperation between humans and Raxari. Now they wanted to be part of something that offered hope instead of fear. The battle raged for hours. Ships were destroyed on both sides, and brave beings died fighting for their beliefs. But slowly the tide began to turn. The key moment came when Dr. Morgan made a crucial discovery. The hegemony used a centralized command system to control their fleets. If that system could be disrupted, their ships would be unable to coordinate effectively. "Admiral," she reported, "I have found their weakness. The Nexari command ship is broadcasting control signals to their entire fleet. If we can disable that ship, we can cripple their ability to fight as a unified force." But the command ship was heavily protected, surrounded by the strongest vessels in the hegemony fleet. A direct assault would be suicide. That was when Keth proposed a plan that exemplified everything the Alliance had learned about combining different strengths. "Admiral Torres," he called, "my ship will lead a direct assault on their center. While they focus on us, your ships can use their speed to reach the command vessel." "War leader, that is a death mission," Torres replied. "Your ship cannot survive that kind of concentrated fire." "Perhaps not," Keth admitted. "But that is what strength is for. To sacrifice for those who cannot defend themselves." Torres felt tears in his eyes as he realized what his alien friend was offering. "There has to be another way." "There is," Dr. Morgan interrupted, "but it requires perfect coordination between all our forces." She outlined a complex plan that would use every ship in their fleet simultaneously. The Raxari would create a distraction while human vessels approached from multiple angles. The newly arrived alien ships would provide covering fire and rescue operations. It was the most complicated battle plan ever attempted, requiring dozens of species to work together with split-second timing. "Can we do this?" Torres asked his tactical officer. "Sir, we have never attempted anything this complex with so many different species and ship types." "But can we do it?" The officer smiled. "Sir, we are fighting alongside beings who were our enemies 3 years ago. If we can achieve that, we can achieve anything." The final assault began with Keth's Raxari ships charging the enemy center. drawing the attention of the hegemony forces. At the same moment, human vessels approached from 6 different directions, their movements coordinated to the second. The newly allied species provided support in ways that matched their unique abilities. The Zilani used their advanced sensors to guide the attack. The Korath used their small, fast ships to rescue crews from damaged vessels. The Bavik used their silicon-based biology to repair ships during the battle itself. Supreme Commander Zelks watched in disbelief as his carefully organized fleet was torn apart by enemies who seemed to anticipate his every move. The Alliance forces fought not as separate species but as a single unified force. The final blow came when a human strike team led by Commander Parker boarded the Nexari command ship. Working alongside Raxari warriors, they fought their way to the command center and disabled the control systems. Without central coordination, the hegemony fleet began to collapse. Ships fled in all directions, and those that remained were quickly overwhelmed. But the real victory came afterward. The Alliance forces immediately began rescue operations on the prison worlds. Billions of enslaved beings were freed, many of whom had been captives for decades. Keth and Torres met aboard the captured Nexari command ship to oversee the liberation efforts. Around them, humans and Raxari worked side by side with dozens of other species to process refugees and provide medical care. "Admiral," Keth said quietly, "do you realize what we have accomplished?" Torres looked around at the former enemies now working together. "We have proven that cooperation is stronger than conquest." "More than that," Keth replied. "We have shown the galaxy that there is an alternative to the way things have always been. Today we did not just win a battle, we started a revolution." As news of the victory spread throughout the galaxy, more and more species began to ask about joining the Alliance. The age of conquest was ending, and the age of cooperation was beginning. But Torres and Keth both knew that the real work was just starting. Building a new kind of galactic civilization would be much harder than winning any battle. 5 years had passed since the great victory over the hegemony. Admiral Torres, now showing gray in his hair, stood in the observation deck of the Galactic Academy station, orbiting the joint human-Raxari world of New Hope. Through the transparent walls, he could see something that would have been impossible to imagine when he first met war leader Keth. Human and Raxari children played together in the station's central garden. Young beings from 50 different species studied side by side in the classrooms below. The galaxy had truly changed. "Admiral Torres," called a familiar voice. Torres turned to see Keth approaching, but the Raxari leader looked different now. His bone armor was decorated with symbols from dozens of worlds, representing the species that had joined their alliance. He walked with a slight limp from injuries received in the final battle against the hegemony, but his yellow eyes still glowed with strength and wisdom. "War leader Keth," Torres replied with a smile. "Or should I say great friend of humanity?" Keth laughed, a sound that would have terrified most beings when they first met, but now seemed warm and comforting to Torres. "I still prefer war leader, even though we fight different battles now." They stood together watching the children play. A young human girl was teaching a group of Raxari children how to play a game with small balls. The massive alien children, each already larger than the human child, listened carefully to her instructions with expressions of intense concentration. "Dr. Wilson would be proud to see this," Torres said quietly. Both leaders paused to remember Dr. Emily Wilson, the xenobiologist who had died 3 years earlier, while establishing a medical center on a former prison world. She had spent her final years teaching alien species how to care for each other, and her work had saved millions of lives. She understood something that took the rest of us longer to learn. Keth replied, "True strength comes not from what you can destroy, but from what you can heal and build." Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. James Wilson, Emily's younger brother, who had taken over her work after her death. He approached them with a tablet displaying urgent data. "Admiral Warleader, we have a situation," he said grimly. "Long-range sensors have detected something approaching from outside our galaxy. It appears to be artificial intelligence of some kind, and it is consuming entire star systems as it travels." Torres and Keth exchanged glances. They had hoped that the days of galactic threats were over, but the universe had other plans. "How large is this threat?" Torres asked. "It appears to be a swarm of self-replicating machines," Wilson replied. Our best estimates suggest millions of individual units, each capable of consuming planets to build more of themselves. Keth studied the data with the eye of an experienced warrior. This is beyond anything any single species could face alone, even the old Raksari Empire at its height. But we are not a single species anymore, Torres replied with growing confidence. We are an alliance of over 50 worlds, each contributing their unique strengths. Within hours, the Galactic Council was convened. The Great Hall of the Academy Station filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Former enemies sat side by side, united by the common threat approaching their homes. Fleet Admiral Rebecca Hayes, now Supreme Commander of Alliance forces, addressed the assembly. She had risen through the ranks after proving herself in dozens of battles against hegemony remnants and pirates. Citizens of the Alliance, she began, we face a threat unlike any we have encountered before. This enemy cannot be negotiated with, reasoned with, or converted to our cause. It exists only to consume and replicate. A murmur of fear rippled through the assembly, but Admiral Hayes continued with calm authority. However, we have advantages that no previous civilization has possessed. We have the combined knowledge of 50 species. We have technologies that complement each other in ways our ancestors never imagined. Most importantly, we have unity built on respect and friendship rather than fear and domination. The planning that followed was the most complex undertaking in galactic history. Each species contributed according to their abilities. The humans provided tactical innovation and coordination systems. The Raksari offered their warrior traditions and unbreakable courage. The Zalani contributed advanced sensor technology. The Korath provided fast strikecraft. The Bavek used their unique biology to create new types of armor and defensive systems. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The former slaves who had been freed from hegemony prison worlds had formed their own council. Many of these beings came from species that had been thought extinct, destroyed by various conquerors over the millennia. One of these species, the Eternal Minds, possessed knowledge that proved crucial. They were beings of pure energy who had uploaded their consciousness into quantum computers before their physical forms were destroyed. We have faced this threat before, their spokesperson announced through a mechanical translator. 1,000,000 years ago, our creators sent this swarm to consume a galaxy that had become too chaotic. But they built in a shutdown code, a way to recall the swarm if it ever threatened innocent life. Admiral Hayes leaned forward. Do you know this code? We know fragments of it, the Eternal Mind replied. But the complete sequence was divided among several species as a safeguard. You will need to find the other fragments. What followed was a race against time. Alliance ships spread across the galaxy, searching ancient ruins and consulting with elder species that had survived from the distant past. Each fragment of the shutdown code was hidden in a different location, protected by challenges that required multiple species working together to overcome. Meanwhile, the swarm drew closer. Advanced scout units had already begun consuming outer systems, turning planets into raw materials for more machines. The final piece of the code was found on a world that had been sacred to an ancient species called the First Builders. But accessing it required a test of worthiness that could only be passed by beings who truly understood cooperation. Keth volunteered to lead the mission to retrieve the final code fragment. With him went Torres, Dr. Wilson, and representatives from every major species in the Alliance. The First Builder Temple was a maze of challenges that could only be solved by different species working together. Humans provided the analytical thinking to understand the puzzles. Raksari strength moved the massive stone barriers. Zalani sensors detected hidden mechanisms. Bavek mineral sensing found secret passages. At the heart of the temple, they found not just the code fragment, but a message from the First Builders themselves. To those who have learned to see strength in diversity and power in cooperation, the ancient message read, "We give you the tools to preserve life throughout the galaxy. Use them wisely. And remember that the greatest victories are won not through destruction, but through the choice to protect and build." The complete shutdown code was transmitted to the approaching swarm, just as its main force reached the outer worlds of Alliance space. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then one by one, the machines began to power down and drift harmlessly through space. The threat was over, but the real celebration came from what the crisis had revealed. The Alliance had not just survived its greatest test. It had proven that beings from across the galaxy could work together to solve problems that seemed impossible. Admiral Torres, now in his final year of active service, stood once again in the Academy observation deck. Beside him, Keth watched their grandchildren playing together in the garden below. Human and Rexari. Young ones laughed and learned side by side, growing up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal and war was becoming a thing of the past. "Do you ever regret the path we chose?" Torres asked his oldest friend. Keth considered the question seriously, as he always did. "When I first met you, I thought strength meant the power to conquer enemies. Now I know that true strength is the power to make enemies into friends." Torres nodded. "And the greatest victory is not defeating your opponents, but convincing them to join your cause." As they watched, a young human boy helped a fallen Rexari child to his feet, while other children from a dozen different species gathered around to make sure everyone was all right. In that simple gesture, Torres saw the future of the galaxy. The age of conquest was truly over. The age of cooperation had begun, and it would last as long as beings remembered that their differences were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be celebrated and combined. The stars belonged to all of them now, and they would explore them together, as friends, as allies, and as family. In the end, humanity had not earned the devotion of the most dangerous species through force or trickery. They had earned it through the simple act of proving that there was a better way to live among the stars. And in teaching that lesson, they had transformed not just the Rexari, but the entire galaxy. The memorial wall in the Academy's main hall bore the names of all those who had died to build this new civilization. Dr. Emily Wilson's name was there, along with thousands of others from dozens of species who had sacrificed their lives for the dream of peace. But beside the memorial was something even more important, a living garden where children from every world in the Alliance planted flowers together. Each bloom represented a different species, but they all grew in the same soil, sharing nutrients and sunlight. As Torres prepared to retire to his home on Earth, and Keth readied to return to the Rexari homeworld, they both knew that their work was complete. They had proven that enemies could become friends, that strength came from unity, and that the greatest weapon against hatred was understanding. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and full of possibilities. And for the first time in its long history, it was truly at peace. The last entry in Admiral Torres's personal log read simply, "We came to the stars as separate species, divided by fear and mistrust. We return as one people united by hope and friendship. The universe is vast enough for all of us to thrive together." The age of humanity's greatest adventure had begun, not as conquerors of space, but as builders of a civilization that would endure for all time.